The black envelope lay on the kitchen counter, its surface smooth and waxy under the dim light. The contrast of it against the pale marble countertop made it look almost unreal, like something misplaced from another world. My name was written in an elegant gold script on the front, precise and deliberate, the kind of handwriting meant to intrigue rather than inform. "Open it," Claire said, her voice light, casual. Too casual. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of something unspoken in the air. It wasn't thick, yet it carried a heaviness that made my fingers hesitate before slipping under the fold. The black wax seal cracked under the pressure, a small snap that sent a pulse of unease through my chest. Inside was an invitation printed on heavy cardstock, deep crimson with embossed silver lettering. An exclusive evening of indulgence and discovery. One night, one rule, surrender, ***. Below, in smaller text, an address. No date, no host, no further explanation. I glanced up at Claire, my wife of 9 years, the woman I had once thought incapable of secrets. She was watching me closely, her lips curved into a careful smile, her eyes unreadable. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the card. Claire took a slow sip of her wine before answering. "It's something different," she said, setting the glass down. "Something for us." "For us?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. She stepped closer, her fingers grazing my wrist. "Ethan, you know how things have been lately." I did. She didn't need to say it. The distance, the silence, the way she turned away in bed, not out of rejection but something worse, indifference. "This is a chance to revive things." Her voice dipped lower, almost conspiratorial. "I thought we could use it." I studied her face, looking for cracks in the mask. Claire had always been good at composure, at keeping the world at arm's length. But there was something in her eyes, something flickering just beneath the surface. Excitement, or something else? I looked at the invitation again. One rule, surrender. A strange shiver ran down my spine. "Where did you get this?" "A friend." "What kind of friend?" She tilted her head, her blonde hair slipping over her shoulder. "Someone who understands things that maybe we don't." I let out a slow breath. "Claire, is this some kind of—" "No," she interrupted quickly, as if anticipating the question. "It's not that." I wanted to believe her. "Then what is it?" She shrugged, that mysterious smile never faltering. "You'll have to come and find out." The drive to the address on the card took us beyond the city limits, far from the familiar streets and neighborhoods I knew. The roads turned darker, quieter, winding through stretches of land where the trees loomed tall, their bare branches skeletal against the night sky. The further we went, the more distant everything felt, like stepping into a different world, one untouched by time. Claire sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on my thigh. I could feel the warmth of it through my jeans, but it wasn't comforting. It felt like an anchor, a reminder that I was being pulled into something I didn't understand. When the mansion finally emerged from the darkness, it looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. The architecture was old, grand in a way that made it feel like it had been transported from another century. The windows flickered with golden light, and sleek black cars lined the circular driveway, their polished surfaces gleaming under the glow of the lanterns. A valet in a dark suit opened Claire's door before I had even turned off the engine. As we stepped out, a woman in a flowing black gown greeted us at the entrance. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a knowing amusement, as if she could see something in us that I couldn't. "Welcome," she said smoothly, stepping aside. "You are expected." Expected. The word settled uneasily in my stomach. Inside, the mansion was even more surreal. Candles flickered along the walls, casting shadows that danced across the velvet drapes and dark wood paneling. Guests moved through the space with an ease that unsettled me. Men and women dressed in elegant black attire, their eyes lingering too long, their smiles just a shade too knowing. Soft music played from an unseen source, slow and hypnotic. The air smelled of something rich and intoxicating, amber and sandalwood, laced with a faint trace of something sharper. Claire took my hand, guiding me deeper into the house, through rooms filled with murmuring voices and clinking glasses. I caught snippets of conversation as we passed. The newest ones always look so lost at first. Let's see how long he lasts before he figures it out. Laughter. A slow, amused chuckle from a man standing too close to a woman who wasn't his wife. I turned to Claire, my voice low. "Who are these people?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she squeezed my hand and leaned in, her breath warm against my skin. "Just relax," she whispered. "Enjoy the night." A server passed by with a tray of wine glasses, and Claire plucked one, handing it to me. "Drink," she urged. I hesitated, then took a sip. The taste was rich, dark, like something meant to make you forget caution. Then I saw him, a man standing across the room, watching us. Tall, sharp-featured, his suit impeccable, his posture at ease. But it was the way he looked at Claire that made my skin prickle. Not like a stranger. Not like someone seeing her for the first time. Like someone who already knew her. Claire's fingers tensed against mine. A flicker of something in her expression. Recognition, quickly buried. And then the man smiled. Not at me. At her. A slow, knowing smile, full of something I couldn't yet name. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a night to revive our marriage. This was something else. Something I was never supposed to understand. Something that had already begun. Long before I arrived. The man's gaze stayed on Claire. He didn't waver, didn't hesitate. Just held her in that slow, silent moment of recognition. And she didn't turn away. She should have. Any normal person would have. But instead, there was a flicker of something in her expression. A shift too subtle for most to notice, but I noticed. She knew him. Not the way you know a coworker or an old acquaintance. This was different. Intimate. Something cold settled deep in my stomach, wrapping tight around my ribs like a vice. My pulse hammered against my throat, but I forced myself to stay still, to watch, to see. The man finally looked at me, as if acknowledging my presence was an afterthought. He tilted his head slightly, a polite smirk curling his lips. He raised his glass. Asterisk a silent toast? A challenge? Asterisk before taking a slow sip. I turned to Claire, my voice even. Who is he? Claire blinked. A second too late. Who? She was good. Always had been. But not good enough. I didn't answer. Just held her gaze until she finally sighed and offered a shrug that was meant to be casual. But the stiffness in her shoulders betrayed her. I think his name is Adrian. He's a friend of, a pause, of the host's. It was a lie. A half-second too long before answering. A breath too shallow. I had spent nearly a decade with this woman. I knew her tells. And right now, she was lying to my face. Before I could press further, someone clinked a glass from the center of the room. The low murmur of conversation faded as a man stepped forward, smiling at the gathered guests. He was tall, dressed in a tailored black suit with a presence that commanded attention. "Good evening, everyone," he said smoothly. "To those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. And to those who have returned," his smile sharpened. "You know what's in store." A soft ripple of laughter. Claire chuckled lightly beside me, but I barely heard her. I was still watching Adrian. Still watching the way he was watching her. The host's voice pulled my attention back. Tonight is not about rules or boundaries. It is about surrender. About trust. That word. Trust. The invitation had said the same thing. One rule. Surrender. But surrender to what? Your only task tonight, the host continued, is to let go of what you think you know. Allow yourselves to explore. To be seen. A woman to my left let out a soft sigh, her lips parting slightly as if she had just taken the first breath in years. A man ran his fingers along the stem of his wine glass, watching someone across the room with open hunger. Something about this wasn't right. The air felt thick, charged with something electric. The way people were looking at each other, it was too intimate, too knowing. And Claire was standing beside me, perfectly poised, but I could feel it now. The distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical, like she was already somewhere else, with someone else. My jaw tightened. I leaned in, lowering my voice. Claire, what is this, really? She smiled. That soft, practiced smile that once made me feel safe. Now it felt like a mask. Ethan? She whispered, running her fingers lightly down my arm. Just trust me. But that was the problem. I wasn't sure I did anymore. Over the next hour, the night unraveled around me like a slow, deliberate illusion. The guests moved through the mansion like actors in a play, slipping between rooms, exchanging touches, whispers, glances. Nothing outright obscene, nothing that could be called wrong, but everything felt just on the edge of something unspoken. Something dark. I tried to engage in conversation, to focus, but my mind kept circling back to Adrian. To the way Claire's breath hitched slightly when he passed by. To the way his fingers had brushed against the small of her back when she thought I wasn't looking. At one point, I excused myself to the restroom just to have a moment alone, to breathe. But as I wandered through the dimly lit hallways, I noticed something strange. A door. Unlike the others, this one was slightly ajar, leading into what looked like an office or study. And inside I saw it. A desk. Papers stacked neatly. And sitting right in the center. A list. Names. Curious. I stepped inside, my fingers grazing the edge of the paper. There were columns. Guests. Members. And then, organizers. My pulse pounded as my eyes moved down the list, scanning the names, until, Claire. Not under guests. Not under members. Under organizers. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in, the dim glow of the lamp casting sharp shadows that stretched like claws. This wasn't just an invitation Claire had received. This was something she had planned. She had known exactly what this was. And she had brought me here anyway. A muffled voice outside made me freeze. I turned slowly, stepping toward the doorway, pressing myself against the frame. Claire's voice. Low.
Urgent.
And another voice. A man's. I knew who it was before I even looked. I told you not to push it, she was saying. He's not stupid. A slow, amused chuckle. I never said he was. Adrian. I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles went white. Claire sighed. Just be careful. A pause. You care too much, Adrian murmured. That's the problem. Silence. Then, Claire's voice again, barely audible. He was never supposed to know. The words slid through my veins like ice. The ground beneath me felt unsteady, like the world had suddenly tilted off its axis. I had walked into this night believing I was a guest. But I wasn't. I was a piece, a pawn in something much bigger than me. And Claire, my wife, the woman I trusted, had played me from the very beginning. I forced myself to step back from the door, my breath slow and controlled, though my heart was hammering in my chest. My mind reeled, trying to piece together the truth. Claire hadn't just invited me to this event. She had planned it. And Adrian, he was no stranger to her. My fists clenched. He was never supposed to know. The words echoed in my skull like a gunshot. Claire had lied to me, manipulated me, dragged me into something I didn't understand. And now I needed answers. I turned sharply, my movements deliberate, and strode back into the hall. Claire and Adrian were still talking in hushed voices. Their bodies too close, their shadows merging against the dimly lit wall. Claire stiffened the moment she saw me. Adrian, on the other hand, simply smiled. That same infuriating, knowing smirk. Ethan? Claire said quickly, her voice smooth but her eyes betraying her unease. I was just... I know. I cut her off. My voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I know everything. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Adrian let out a low chuckle. Well, he mused, swirling the wine in his glass. That didn't take long. I ignored him, my focus solely on Claire. How long? I asked, my voice quieter now, but sharper. How long have you been coming here? She hesitated just for a second. That was all the confirmation I needed. Claire reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Ethan, please. I was going to tell you. Were you? I asked, tilting my head. Before or after tonight? Silence. And then, Adrian exhaled, setting his glass down on a nearby table. This is getting tedious, he murmured, turning to Claire. Just tell him. Claire flinched. And that's when I knew. Whatever this was, whatever she was, Adrian held the real power. Claire's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Her fingers curled at her sides, and for the first time, I saw something real in her eyes. Not guilt, not shame, fear, but not of me, of him. Adrian tilted his head slightly, his smirk fading into something unreadable. Come on, Claire, he said softly. He's already here. No need to pretend anymore. I looked between them, my pulse hammering. My wife, my wife, stood frozen, as if caught between two worlds. The one she had with me and whatever the hell this was. I took a slow step forward, my voice low and steady. Tell me the truth. Now. Claire exhaled shakily. Then, without meeting my eyes, she whispered, I've been part of this, for a while. A knife to the gut would have been kinder. For a while, I repeated hollowly. And by this, you mean? Adrian cut in smoothly. A society, he said, as if discussing a casual hobby. A very select one. We provide experiences for those willing to embrace them. My jaw tightened. And Claire. Adrian's smirk returned. Claire has been instrumental in making those experiences possible. The words twisted in my gut. She wasn't just involved. She was essential. I turned to her, my hands trembling at my sides. How much of this was real, Claire? Her lips parted, her eyes glassy, but she said nothing. That was my answer. Adrian let out a quiet laugh, stepping closer, his voice like silk. You were never supposed to know, Ethan, he murmured. You were just supposed to play your part. A chill ran down my spine. My part? I didn't know what this game was, but I sure as hell wasn't going to be played. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I kept my stance firm. Adrian was watching me like a cat watches a trapped bird. Amused, patient, waiting for me to break. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I turned to Claire. Was our marriage real? My voice was quieter now, but sharper than ever. Or was I just another piece in your little society? Her breath hitched. Ethan, please. Answer me. She hesitated, and in that moment, I realized the truth. She had to think about it. Something in me cracked. Adrian clicked his tongue. Don't be so dramatic, he drawled. Your marriage was real. In the beginning. The beginning. Meaning now, everything now was a lie. I let out a slow breath, clenching my jaw to keep from losing control. So what was I then? I asked. A distraction? A cover? Something to make you feel normal? Claire flinched. No, it's not like that. Adrian smirked. Actually, Ethan, it's exactly like that. I turned to him, fists tightening. You think this is funny? He exhaled a small laugh, shaking his head. No. I think it's predictable. His voice was full of quiet condescension. Men like you always react the same way. You think you're in control of your lives, of your marriages. He took a slow step forward. Until you realize, you never were. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to wipe that smug look off his face. But more than anything, I wanted to get the hell out of this place. I turned back to Claire, my voice cold. We're leaving. Adrian let out a low chuckle. Oh, Ethan, he murmured. You still don't get it. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I glanced at Claire, and for the first time I saw it clearly. She wasn't going to leave. She had no intention of leaving. She was never coming back. Claire wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, her breath shallow. But she didn't move. She wasn't trapped. She chose this. I felt something inside me twist, something raw and jagged. You're staying. My voice came out quieter than I intended. She swallowed hard. Ethan. It's not that simple. Adrian hummed in amusement. It really is. I ignored him, taking a step closer to Claire. Then explain it to me, I demanded. Make me understand why you would lie to me for years. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a brief moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. Not after this. You were happy, she whispered finally. Cold, bitter laugh escaped me. Asterisk happy? Asterisk. I shook my head. You built an entire life with me based on a lie. And you're telling me it was for my happiness? She flinched. Adrian let out a low chuckle. See, he murmured. This is why we don't usually let spouses in on the truth. They tend to react poorly. I turned sharply toward him. Shut up. He smirked but said nothing. I exhaled sharply, turning back to Claire. My voice was calmer now, but every word cut like a knife. So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? She hesitated. Then, in the softest voice, she whispered, I already did. A slow, cold numbness spread through my chest. She wasn't making a decision now. She had made it long ago, and I had been blind to it. I took a step back. Then another. Claire's lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came. Adrian simply watched, satisfied. I turned, walking away without another word, because there was nothing left to say. I walked through the mansion's corridors, my footsteps heavy against the polished floors. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows that stretched unnaturally along the walls, warping the space around me. The air felt thicker now, suffocating. I needed to leave, but as I reached the entrance hall, a figure stepped into my path. A woman in a sleek black dress, her lips curved in a knowing smile. You're leaving already? She asked, her voice smooth as silk. I didn't respond. I moved to step past her, but she placed a delicate hand on my chest, stopping me. You should stay, she murmured. Most men do once they understand. I clenched my jaw. Understand what? She tilted her head, studying me like a curiosity. That love is an illusion. That trust is a game. And that people? She glanced toward the dimly lit room where Claire and Adrian stood. Will always choose themselves in the end. I exhaled sharply, stepping back. Get out of my way. Her smirk deepened, but she stepped aside without resistance. You'll see, Ethan. I didn't look back. I pushed through the heavy doors and into the night, the crisp air hitting my skin like a slap. My car sat in the circular driveway, a lone reminder of the life I had arrived with, the life that no longer existed. I got in, started the engine, and drove. The mansion's glow faded in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the dark. Claire had made her choice. Now I had to make mine. The road stretched endlessly ahead, winding through the darkness. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, but my mind wasn't on the drive. It was still back there, in that house, trapped in the weight of everything I had just learned. Claire had chosen them. She had chosen him, and I had been nothing more than a placeholder. Convenience. A buzzing sound pulled me from my thoughts. My phone, vibrating in the passenger seat. Claire. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. For a moment I considered answering, letting her explain, letting her lie to me one last time. Instead, I let the call ring out. Seconds later, a message appeared. Ethan, please, just talk to me. Asterisk asterisk. I let out a slow breath, the weight of those words pressing against my ribs. She didn't deserve my silence. She deserved nothing. Without hesitation, I deleted the message. Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, Claire had no way of reaching me. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The highway stretched before me, empty except for the occasional flicker of headlights in the opposite lane. I kept driving, the hum of the engine steady, rhythmic. Something solid to cling to as my mind spun through the wreckage of the night. Claire, Adrian, the society. Every moment of our marriage replayed in my head, now stained with the knowledge that I had never truly known her. How many nights had she come home from one of these events, kissed me, whispered that she loved me, while another man's touch still lingered on her skin. I clenched the wheel, my jaw tightening. I had built a life on an illusion, and I had been the only one who didn't know. The anger simmered beneath my ribs, hot and slow-burning. I had expected grief, devastation, but what I felt most was rage. Not just at Claire but at myself. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And she had let me believe I was part of something real while she played her secret games in the shadows. I shook my head, forcing my foot down harder on the accelerator. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get as far away from that house, asterisk from her asterisk, as possible. Then I remembered the list. The names. Claire had been listed as an organizer. That meant this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't some reckless decision made in a moment of weakness. This was who she was. And that meant there were more lies. More secrets. A terrifying thought hit me then. One that sent a cold shudder through my entire body. Had she ever loved me at all? Or had I just been a role to play in whatever life she was truly living? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. The answer didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. Not now. Not ever. I pulled into a motel parking lot somewhere outside the city, the neon sign flickering weakly against the black sky. The place was nothing special, just a forgotten little stop along the highway, but right now it was exactly what I needed. A place to disappear. The lobby was quiet, the air stale with the scent of old carpet and cheap coffee. The night clerk barely looked up as I handed over my credit card, sliding a key across the counter. "Checkout's at 11, he muttered, already turning back to his newspaper. I nodded, taking the key and heading down the dimly lit hallway. The room was small. A single bed, a battered nightstand, a TV that looked like it hadn't worked in years. But it was clean, and more importantly, it was mine. I locked the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands over my face. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. For the first time since I left that mansion, I was alone with my thoughts, and I didn't know if I could handle them. My phone was still off, but I could feel the weight of it in my pocket. Claire had called once. She would call again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, she would want to explain, to twist the truth into something easier to swallow. But I wasn't going to give her the chance. I pulled the phone out and turned it back on, only long enough to do what I should have done the moment I walked out of that house. I blocked her number. Then I shut the phone off again and tossed it onto the nightstand. For the first time in years, Claire had no way to reach me. And for the first time in years, I didn't want her to. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Claire and Adrian, their whispers, their secrets, the way she looked at him like he was someone who mattered. I had been nothing more than a footnote in her life. Somewhere around dawn, exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I woke, sunlight was seeping through the faded curtains. The world outside was moving on, indifferent to the fact that mine had crumbled overnight. I sat up slowly, my body aching in ways that had nothing to do with sleep. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the blank wall in front of me, trying to make sense of who I was now. Then I reached for my phone. Not to check for messages. I already knew Claire had no way of reaching me. No, I needed answers. I searched for the mansion's address, but nothing came up. No name, no history, like it didn't exist. I tried the guest list I had seen, cross-referencing names with social media, business records. Most were ghosts. But then I found one. A man who had spoken to Claire that night, his name buried in an old business article about exclusive networking events. I clicked on the link, my pulse quickening. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just a group. It was something much bigger. And Claire, she hadn't just been attending. She had been recruiting. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the articles, piecing together fragments of a world I had never known Claire was part of. This wasn't some elite social club. It was a network, one that thrived on secrecy, influence, and control. They weren't just attending these events. They were orchestrating them. And Claire had been one of them all along. The realization settled like a stone in my gut. How many others had she lured in? How many men had been dragged into this without knowing what they were really walking into? Had I ever meant anything to her? I closed my eyes, exhaling sharply. It didn't matter. Not anymore. I had spent the last 9 years believing in something that was never real. That part of my life was over. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. I could expose them. Not just Claire, but all of them. I had names, faces, enough breadcrumbs to tear a hole in whatever careful illusion they had built. For the first time since I left that mansion, I had power. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. One call, one message to the right person. I could burn it all down. Claire, Adrian, their entire twisted little world. But as I exhaled slowly, something in me shifted. Revenge wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't erase the years I had spent living in a lie. It wouldn't give me back the man I had been before last night. No, the only way to win was to walk away. Not just from Claire, not just from the betrayal, but from the person I had been. The man who had ignored the signs. The man who had let himself be blind. I deleted everything. Every note, every name, every lead I had found. Then I powered off my phone and dropped it into the motel's trash can. I wasn't going back. Not to her. Not to any of it. I stepped outside, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on my skin. The world stretched out before me, vast and unknown. For the first time in years, I had no plan.
No expectations.
And for the first time in years, I was free. I took a deep breath. Then I started walking.